What do you disagree with Rollo on?
So we agree on a lot. What we disagree on is the biggest thing that I think is most problematic is marriage, that you can't endorse marriage.
Not now.
And I think that if we look at what is the optimal environment to bring children into this environment, into this world, if my buddy Sauce wanted to have kids, do you want kids?
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we could agree that the optimal environment is to be in a nuclear family where the man and the woman are in the household together.
Socially enforced monogamy has been the bedrock of Western society for a long time.
So we agree on that. However, the red pill speaks very low of marriage. You guys have a very, in my opinion, a very skewed view of marriage based on 66% of marriages are filed by women, on and so forth.
70, but half of marriages end in divorce right now, at least in Western, but statistically speaking, you got a 50-50 chance of having a quote-unquote successful marriage, whatever that is defined as. And then, of course, it's 70 to 80% of
Okay,
marriages.
and your book
depends
says,
on whose numbers you... I was trying to be as conservative as I could
Your book
be.
was 60 to 70.
Yeah,
according to
that's
your
why
book.
I was trying to be conservative with that.
So if the optimal environment is for kids, Sauce One's kids, is to be married in the same household.
With a husband and a wife.
With a husband and a wife.
a man and a woman, however you define it.
Husband and a wife is fine. The painting of marriage is not helpful, in my opinion, based on what we know about marriage. So marriage is 40 to 50% end in divorce. What's left out is kind of this character of divorce. You do 90% of the work. She puts in 10%, and then she could file divorce at any time, and then you have to split all the proceeds. There's a lot you leave out there, Rollo. A whole lot. For starters, divorce highly correlated with income. The less you make, the more likely you are to get divorced. This is a fact. I got sources.
And it's commonly known that like one of the top two issues in divorce is or breakups is money.
It's money.
So,
It's money. And Dave Ramsey would say that number one reason people get divorced is money fights money problems. Okay, so one, we know that the more people make, the least likely they are to get divorced. That's a fact. With regards about 250K, you flatten out, I think, at about a 25% rate. So one, that's omitted from the fact. And then the response goes, well, alimony. Okay, if the average man, median income for the average man, take away the bottom and the top outliers, is about $60,000 a year. Okay, average is about $40,000 when you got the outliers. Okay, people aren't paying alimony on those types of salaries. So the average person is most optimally to thrive. And I can give you all the statistics about how being single, you're highly to be suicidal, depression, all these unhealthy, lazy, all these different things. The optimal environment for a man is to be in a marriage. Okay. So
for kids, you mean?
For
kids?
For his mental health. And again, and I got the studies. We could look at the studies if you want to look at the studies. Suicide rate, depression, unhealth, all kinds of different things. It's awful if you're a man in your 40s. So the red pill is framing marriage as this caricature that maybe on the contractual side, there are outliers where women take advantage of men. But the average case is that if you know how to make money, if you understand some of the game side of things, I would say there's some utility. And I think what you guys do a good job is you stir people away from some type of women that are, in my opinion, selection biased. Sauce, you got married before, right?
Briefly, yes.
Yeah. And what did you do to protect yourself in that marriage?
Oh, well, I had a prenup.
You had a prenup, right? Dave Ramsey recommends prenups for anybody that's independently wealthy before they go into a marriage.
I
Dave
had
Ramsey
money,
is a
she
financial
didn't. Correct.
You got a prenup, and I protected you.
Yes.
Correct? I got buddies that have covenantal marriages per your book. Got a couple buddies. They got married. They kept the state out of it. They protected themselves, right? And so on and so forth. So I think primarily this character of marriage, man, is I think very toxic. On top of which you go on to glorify how being a virgin is ideal in a marriage, which is
for the woman,
for both people.
For the man too.
For the man, we could correlate body counts.
You could.
Hold on. What?
You could.
We could start the show,
we could correlate body counts.
That's where I'm gonna start weighing here, gentlemen.
We could correlate body counts to less happiness in a sex life. The higher, more partners you have, the less likely you are to be happy in a marriage sexually. That's proven. I think
if you don't know what you're missing, if ignorance is bliss.
100%. So, and on top of it, and this is the part I'm probably most bummed about, and you identify as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, somebody. I'm bummed, Rollo, that you left out all the statistics about how unlikely you are to get divorced if you are a person of faith who practices their faith. Now, I know you're going to say that's the no true Scotsman argument. It's not. If you believe in earning wealth, you're going to do certain things to practice earning wealth. If you believe the Lakers are the best basketball team, you're going to wear a jersey and go to a game occasionally. If you profess to be a Catholic or a Christian, you do things that show that, and that you go to church, you pray, you do certain things. So when we factor all of these different variables together, when we factor in, hey, if you make more than the average person, hey, if you have a great sex life, if you maybe have a prenup, if you have independent wealth, if you're a person of faith, the divorce rate plummets way, way, way off the ground, lower body count. And that's the part, Rollo, that I'm like, man, this is such a caricature of marriage that I was really bummed out that you as a Christian didn't put any of this in there with the caveat. And I appreciated you putting the virgin thing in there because I thought that was fair of you. And that's the part where I go, man, if the optimal environment for our buddy Sauce is to one day get married, to have kids, why would we not tell him that? Why would we keep this information from him? Why would we omit this?
Is that your goal? Is that your goal to do that? That's first and foremost is like, what do you want as a man right now? Because right now we're in the 21st century. We're 21 years into, 21 and a half years into the 21st century, okay? We're still clinging to old order ideals. We're still clinging to a 20th century, actually probably like an 18th century ideal when it comes to monogamy. We are not looking at it from a post-sexual revolution. And I'm saying for better or worse. I'm not saying this is, okay, I don't deal in shoulds, I deal in is. Okay?
But you do, though, because you prescribe very specific things in your book, The Rational Male. We can get into that later.
I understand
that. But you do prescribe things, Rollo.
I make a point to be as objective. I know it's impossible to be entirely objective.
Right. You believe in objective truth.
I have an obligation to it.
But you prescribe certain things.
I don't prescribe anything. I don't.
Okay, we can come back to that.
So let me explain something.
Let him get this out.
Let me explain a couple
of
things here. I'm not in the business of making men better men. I'm in the business of giving men the tools that they need to make better choices, to become better men themselves. I'm not trying to be a cult leader. I'm not trying to be any kind of. I'm not. I told this to Jedediah yesterday. Is like I bristle at the idea of being an influencer because to me it's like, who are you influencing and what gives you the authority to be that quote unquote influencer as it is right now?
But let me just understand what you just said right there, and then I'll let you continue. It's almost like cause and effect. You said I'm not here to help men be better. I'm here to give them the education to be better. Well, it's the same thing.
Tomato, Rollo. You were prescribing certain activities.
There's a big difference.
So
I'll explain to you why. Okay, I do not have a step-by-step program that says follow this template and you will have a great fucking life. I have nothing like that.
Neither do I. Neither does Sauce. Neither does PPD.
I'm not saying that you do. I'm saying that that's my approach when I write any book, when I do any show, when I write any essay. It's not about here's what you should do. Here's what is happening. What are you going to do with this information? Okay, it's like fire. Okay. You can use fire to heat your home and cook your food, or you can use fire to burn your neighbor's house down, and you can go and set your neighbors on fire as well.
We're not endorsing that, by the way.
Please don't. But what I'm saying is that like it's not the actual red pill that is the problem. It is how is that being used. So when people like come at me and they say the red pill is about this, and I'll say no, that's black pill doomers. That's the MGTOW side of this thing. That's the MRA side of this thing. When we started this whole the whole podcast here, it's like, well, what's your philosophy? This is your philosophy. That's your philosophy. There is no philosophy of the red pill. The red pill is a praxeology. I need to set that out right now.
And you said praxeology,
and people are going to come at me because they think it's strictly related to like economics and stuff like that. But praxeology is basically the study of behavior with the intent of showing that behavior is something that it has a purpose or a latent function to it, kind of thing. So people behave in such a way as this is how it works, kind of thing. So when I am talking about marriage, and you're not the first person to throw this at me, is that they say, well, Rollo, how can you be red pill because you're married, or how can you be married because you're red pill, right? And so I'm always stuck in the middle of all of that because I have a great, by all estimates, I have a fantastic ideal marriage. For most guys would say it's an ideal marriage for 26 years. I have a kid, right? So when especially from the traditional conservative side of things, they come at me and say, well, how can you be so down on marriage? I'm not down on marriage. In fact, I make that point in religion. I said, I'm not down on marriage. I'm down on how we do it now. Okay. As I said before, monogamy, pair bonded monogamy, however you want to define it. Like, remember, it's Judeo-Christianity doesn't have a monopoly on marriage. Okay. Marriage has been a thing between men and women for a very, very long time. Whether it's in Muslim culture or it's in Jewish culture or it's in like even Asian culture, you can go back to feudal Japan and find people getting married. Okay, so they had nothing to do with Abrahamic religions, but they're still pairing off like that. So there's something innate in us that says, hey, we're better together than we are apart. Okay, where it is functionally, evolutionarily advantageous for human males and human females to compromise their mating strategies, come together, and be parentally invested in that quote unquote family unit, which of course becomes the first tribe that you have. And we can talk about tribalism later on. So I'm not against marriage. I'm against the way we do it now in a post-sexual revolution.
Explain that, because
but that's a sociological phenomenon. Like that's social culture that's dysfunctional.
Yeah,
right.
That's
so
why
I don't follow culture, Rollo. I build culture.
Do you have a legal contract between you and your wife?
I do have a legal contract between
that's part of the culture.
Yes, that's a part of the culture because we chose to be that. I can get into why that is if you want me to. But when you're talking about people just brainlessly following culture, right? Like I get it. That sounds like everyone's plugged into the matrix and acting like an idiot. I'm with you. The issue is that most people who want to be successful at anything aren't going to follow culture. Okay? If I come to you and I say, Adam, man, I want to double my income this year. You're going to give me a bunch of countercultural examples of how to do that. Correct?
Countercultural?
Don't go out and party every night. Don't play video games.
Don't take on student loan debt. Don't just do the typical 9 to 5.
All of that is countercultural.
The very fact that you're an influencer disqualifies any of that. The very fact that do you make more money as a rapper or do you make more money as an influencer right now?
Right now as a YouTuber.
Then you're following culture.
Okay, but
even as a rapper, you are.
No. But I'm building that.
Why is that?
Well, I'm saying that our idea of what it is we want to do, our passions in life, and everything is like I rail against social constructionism. I get that part of it, right? But the very fact that we're even on this show with all these cameras around us, or Patrick's over here,
are you saying that he'd be more counterculture if he said, "I don't do social media"?
If he was counterculture, he'd be in a punk band.
No. I said the things that it requires to be successful at anything is countercultural, Rollo. And so as a person that's creative, I have to make countercultural decisions to be not the average.
But you have to work within that culture.
I do have to do that. But let me give you an example. You mentioned something in your book about Christians jacking culture, right? And you talked about what was the Striper band and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's the Christian kosher.
Christian kosher. I like that. I like that a lot. But you made this one really example, and I think this kind of speaks to this. You reference J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings influencing Dungeons and Dragons. And then you also reference C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, which is to you a spinoff. J.R.R. Tolkien led C.S. Lewis to faith. J.R.R. Tolkien who's a Christian, built Lord of the Rings and led culture that then the world, Dungeons and Dragons, and non-Christians followed. So I think you miss how much I think is driven by art creativity within modern music, within Lord of the Rings and all this sorts of things. That your example was often that like that was led by a Christian who led C.S. Lewis, and he was building culture. And I'm saying there's other examples of people doing that all throughout history. We could talk about modern pop music, modern rock and roll. All of that is rooted in the Black church experience. Rhythm and blues comes out of that. So the church has always built culture. Right now, it's not looking good. I'd agree with you that in some ways it's not looking good. But to be successful at anything, we have to be countercultural with our choices while we engage culture to further our messages.
But real quick, how does this break down to the marriage? Because we were going on marriage for I don't want to skip over the marriage.
I'll explain why that is. Okay, because I make the point in my fourth book in religion is that there's a difference between covenant marriage and contractual marriage. Okay, so I'm going to throw this out as an example. My friend Abu American is a Muslim. Okay. I believe at present he has 4 wives, maybe 3. Okay, now
good work, homie.
Yeah. So, but that's in Muslim culture, you can have up to 4 wives. The polygamy is still a thing for
certain parts,
but not in America. Not America.
But not no, because the culture of America says you can only have 1 wife. You're only limited to 1 wife, right?
It sounds like a lot of headaches.
But their religion allows them to have up to 4 wives. So what do I choose? Do I choose the state or do I choose my religion, right? So you've got that balance.
You said
there.
The covenant of marriage or the government?
So his marriages are based on not on legal contracts, not on like marriage contracts. It's like, do you believe in my faith? Oh yeah, okay. You'll be my wife, and so will she, and so will she, and so will she, right? And so they can't legally get I believe he lives in Germany, so I can't really do that here in the U.S. because that goes against polygamy laws, right? But he can do it in another country, and so because things are a little bit different there. But what their marriage, and right up until the point where we started to turn marriage and religion into franchise and into a commercial enterprise, you didn't need a marriage contract back in medieval Renaissance era Europe. It was just like before God and your friends, and everybody got a ring, we're good to go.
So when did that that start here in America or in the West?
I mean, certainly, like I would presume around the Industrial Revolution or somewhere around there.
So in the 1700s, give or take.
What I'm saying is, like, I don't endorse marriage in the sense that it is done right now. I really wish. That's one of the reasons I don't use my marriage as an example for like proof of concept for like, here's, just do what I do, guys, and you'll be able to have this great life.
Right.
I never do that because you're not me. You're not my wife. You don't have the same circumstances that I do. So it would be irresponsible of me to go and say, here's a template for you to follow and you'll be just like Rollo Tomasi. I would not do that. I want those guys to build their own lives and say, hey, I'm the author of my own life. I'm not a Tomasi man or a Jordan Peterson man or whoever man.
So help me clarify this then. And maybe I'm misunderstanding you because I don't want to straw man your position. So you've been married 26 years. Praise God. That's amazing. I've been married 14 years. We're entering that phase where we've been together longer than we've been apart.
26?
26, 14 together, 18.
Wow.
Okay. So that's amazing, right?
Guys, I made it almost a couple years, bro. So respect to you guys. Okay.
You believe in objective truth. I'm assuming you're unsure about objective morality. You say morality is social.
I think certain aspects of morality make sense and certain aspects do not make sense, or they seem contrived at least.
That's fair. Okay. There's certain things that we accept as moral that may not always be moral. That's fair. We can get into the pro-choice side of things. That's fair, right? Because that's women's choice is moral. Sure. But why not preach what you practice? Why, like, as a man, I would want to know what you did to get to 26 years of marriage. You say you have the ideal marriage. It's very interesting language to describe that, ideal marriage. You have a daughter. Why would you not give us some game on that?
Because the way that we do marriage now, like, and people ask me all this time, they say, Rollo, if you weren't married, would you get married now? I would say absolutely not. If God forbid I found myself a widower or whatever, tomorrow, I would not get married in this present state. I'm not saying the institution, the idea of marriage is a bad idea. Yeah. You probably read this as well. We are better together than we are apart. We are innate, evolved, natural complements to one another.
It's not good for a man to be alone.
But very specifically, why would you not get married today?
Because the way that we do it now, and this is exactly goes back to your point where everybody goes, well, alimony this, and I'll lose half my stuff, and I think, by the way, I think that's kind of like a specious argument from guys who don't want to get married.
Really, who don't even make enough money to pay alimony
to worry about. But they also have to pay child support. They also get into bad situations.
Child support has nothing to do with being married. You could have a one night stand with a baby mama and pay child support.
I understand, but when we talk about like prenups, the prenup saved me. Yeah, did you have any kids? No. But
kids.
If you had kids, you would still be paying a form of child support and a form of alimony that goes up. And again, I can get into the divorce machine. There's lots of like.
But Rollo, do you really think that much has changed in 26 years in terms of the legalities of things? Because I don't think much has changed.
No, they haven't. But I would say.
So did you make a bad decision 26 years ago?
No, not at all. But the thing is this: is that it is
the culture has changed.
The culture has most definitely changed. Getting into I'll tell you what my dad said. I asked my dad one time. I said, why did you get married to my mom? My dad was like a dyed-in-the-wool atheist, and my mom was a born-again Christian. She later became Catholic and everything. And I'm like, what on earth possessed you guys to get married together? And my dad said this. He was like looking at me. He says, it seemed like a good idea at the time. and thank God, my brother and I were produced as a result of that. And I am who I am because of my father and because of my mother as well. But the long and the short of it is, I understand the institution. I understand why marriage exists. I understand why premarital, prohibitions against premarital sex, being or even prearranged marriages for that. I understand why those exist. I don't think that they are tenable in the 20th or 21st century at this state. I understand why they're there, and I understand the mechanics behind them. Yep. However, expecting, especially in modern day society where marriage rates are at 5.1 per 1,000 right now, you're looking at a divorce rate that's fallen off a cliff. Yeah, because no one's getting married right now, and the age of first marriage is getting pushed further and further into our early 30s. Primarily because of a post-sexual revolution mentality with respect to monogamy.
And which I think is trash, by the way. I think the post-sexual revolution is bad.
Because it is, as far as best practices are concerned, if you have all these tools, if you understand, you have this database, and you have all this education about intersexual dynamics, How do you use this? What do you do with that? That's really not the purview of the red pill. And I don't know where there's a lot of people who want to be red pill voices right now. A lot of them come back to my work. That's all they do. And they're looking at mine as sort of like the source material for wherever they're going to take it and go with it. So if you look at Fresh and Fit, you look at like Andrew Tate, you look at even Kevin Samuels, it's all derivatives of stuff that I have done since really 2002, 2004.
And this is something you disagree with Kevin Samuels on, though.
I would,
because Kevin Samuels still prescribed marriage. Rest in peace, Kevin Samuels.
Okay, so here's the thing. Would I prescribe marriage? I would if we had some form of marriage reform. Okay, if there was some sort of, I
like where this is going. Rollo Tomasi just said he prescribes marriage.
I would prescribe marriage.
What would you put for
some reform?
Okay, if there was,
lay that out.
Okay, what benefit? And I'll throw this out again. I always ask this: what benefit is there for a man inside of marriage that he can't get outside of marriage? You're not married. Like you, right now, it's like you looking and trying to find some guy or someone right now, some girl, woman, not guy. Sorry,
throw that out there.
Sorry.
Come to church. Come to church.
You're trying to find someone. You're trying to find someone. It's like you're going to have, especially at your value, who you are right now. You're in a position of sexual selectivity that most men are never going to be able to enjoy in their lifetime. So you're like, okay, I want to have kids. I want to find somebody that I can settle down with.
Yeah.
But the downside risks of that, and I'm not just talking about marriage, I'm also talking about the follow-on downstream effects of making a bad choice, right? You've heard this before. I'm sure I forget. I think maybe it was Warren Buffett who said, the most important decision you can make in your life is like who you're going to marry. You're going to pair yourself
talks about that all the time,
right? So it's not just about you and the woman. It's about the families you created, the families that come together on either side, and your grandchildren and your friends and your dogs and everything else. That's sort of that downstream effect. It hinges on one thing: intersexual dynamics. It hinges on being able to come together and having that knowledgeable database. I'm not against marriage. I'm against marriage in the sense that it's like, didn't know it was coming, didn't know the risks, didn't know this, didn't know all the downstream effects that could come from it, because you have this romantic ideal in your head that, oh, she's the one. And most guys live in a state of sexual scarcity. Yeah. So the first girl that gets off with him, suddenly she's the one, ordained from God to be his wife for forever.
Now this is where
final thoughts, because we have like 20 more topics, so we're not going to spend an hour on marriage, guys.
So, do you think there's any selection bias, though, in the way you're describing some of these women in terms of the culture?
I don't necessarily think first of all, I think if there's a bias, it's a post-sexual revolution bias for the last 4 generations where we're at.
For some women, not all women.
I would say that in some effects, all women, and some effects, some women. Okay, so I made this point with Jedediah yesterday. Is like, if you were born after, say, like 1960,
You're
right now, you have had gynocentric feminist ideals planted into your brain that you think are just given truths. You think that they're self-evident truths. Whereas if you were born in a generation prior to the sexual revolution, it would be like, you're like, what are you talking about?
Right, that's fair.
So where's the sexual revolution? What's the
it's about 1965.
Yeah, 1965.
Right when hormonal birth control was
all that
presented.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
hippies, Woodstock, that kind of was all in that time frame.
So you may prescribe marriage with some reforms. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I did say that monogamy was the bedrock of Western civilization.
And we agree on that.
Absolutely. How that is formalized is really kind of particular to the society, the religion, the guys.
Sure. And so I would take the stance that I want to tip the scales as much in Sauce's favor as I possibly can if he wants to get married.
We're going to get you married, Sauce.
I appreciate it. I mean, you two by my side.
He wants to have kids. So
that's all.
So you say, so that's great. Now, what I would call your prescriptions, I think, are where it gets problematic, and you probably know where I'm going. You got spinning plates, right? And then you have don't wait for sex if she makes you wait for sex.
Talked about it yesterday with Jedediah.
So how does that work in your mind as someone that's prescribing a lot of non-consensual dating? I mean, to the point, Rollo, where you go on and you tell people, push out the girls that aren't going to let you smash for weekdays, and the ones that are going to give you intimacy, smash, hang out with them. And I got the quote right here: hang with them on.
Is that a quote from the Bible?
No, this is the Bible of Rollo.
The Bible.
Save your weekends for women who've had proven an interest in you, sexual, and relegate those who haven't to Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then you say don't ever wait for sex. If a woman makes you wait for sex,
I don't say that is not what that says. By the way, I don't say. Okay, it's here's the rule. Okay, Iron Rule Tomasi number 3 is this: if a woman makes you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait. That I was explaining this to Jedediah yesterday. Okay, this is the number one thing.
If she
people
wants
try
to
to come at
screw
me.
you, she'll screw you.
Well,
She'll show that she wants to screw you.
It's not about the sex. You also say, if you look at the end of that chapter, I also make I put some caveats at the end of that where I'm saying, like, look, if your religious convictions are such that you're like, I don't believe in premarital sex, because most guys who are reading this, most guys on planet Earth right now, they're not waiting to have sex. Most women are not waiting to have sex. I am writing for I'm writing in a time where that is the reality right now. Also, it's not to say that everybody is like that. There are guys who are going to wait for sex. There are women who are going to wait for sex. Got it. Understood. That's why I put the caveat at the end of that saying, like, if this is your conviction, this chapter, this rule, whatever, is not about the sex part. It is about establishing genuine desire, because that entire rule is all about is this woman really into me?
Well,
is she
I like genuine desire.
Does she have mitigating?
Here's what I want to know, gentlemen. Hold on. Do you believe? I want to get your answer, and then we're going to move on to the next topic. I promise you that. Do you believe you should only have sex with one woman and wait till marriage?
Yes.
That's your belief?
Yes. And based on the empirical data, virgins are happiest in marriage. People who wait to get married are the happiest. People with the lowest body counts are the most fulfilled.
So my ignorance is bliss.
So my issue, sure. But my issue is when Rollo with one sentence is saying, I'm a Christian and being a virgin is great. So, and 70% of virgins are in church. And at the same time, we're creating an environment based on increasing women's body counts and increasing men's body counts, which is going to be counterintuitive to when they want to settle down and get married.
You're reading that as a prescription, okay?
But how is spinning plates not a prescription, Rollo?
I'll tell you.
But just so I'm clear, do you believe in what he believes in, that you should be a virgin and wait till marriage?
What's your personal belief?
Belief is this. Do I think that that's a best practice? I think it makes great sense. I think that is untenable in the 21st century. Hell, it's untenable in the 20th century, which is why it is a rule.
Hold on. You think it's untenable for people to delay sexual gratification?
Yes, absolutely.
Based on what?
Because men need sex and women need sex as well.
And you can't wait for 6 months or a year court?
Okay.
What do you mean 6 months to a year?
A lot of the folks I know who are getting married in their early 20s, they date, they get married. We're talking about a 12 to 18 month window. They're married. Most of them, they're virgins. They go on, they build lives together. Kevin Samuels will call this an IKEA marriage.